Okay, well, we're nearly. So we're good to go now. Audio's good.
We're good.
Yep. Um, we were what we were talking about was just in that space of one of the things that stood out was that value to cost ratio.
Yeah, sure.
So that's something we hadn't covered.
Yep.
So can you just tell us a bit about that in your own words?
Mm.
If there was there is there anything else that's worth commenting on in terms of the overall project and
Yeah, absolutely. The research, in my experience in the past, research can be a really expensive thing to do, and within the overall sort of investment sort of window we were working in, without partnering with somebody like Big Ears, we wouldn't have been able to conduct the research that we conducted. So really kind of fit for purpose and sort of economic, right? So we were able to run a very comprehensive research exercise without having to spend the sort of money that you'd normally spend via an agency or a traditional sort of market research shop.
And do you see these guys as a useful partner for the business that are going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So the research was only sort of half of the engagement, so to speak. So we're also making use of Big Ears' voice of customer solution for both pre and post purchase service and satisfaction feedback, and that voice of customer tool in itself is incredibly feature rich, and it gives you the opportunity to really respond to cases where a customer's had a poor experience, or if there's something, if there's a follow-up required with them, and you can, that kind of happens in real time. And similar to the research, we're able to slice and dice the service feedback results we get based on the context that we provide with the sampling. So when I first contacted Big Ears and started talking to them about feedback, I talked about that in terms of the wider project that we were engaging with, and they actually front-footed the fact that they had a research tool that might have been able to help us with one of the areas that sat within that project. So no, look, we're in. It's a really valuable relationship. The feedback itself is incredibly economic in terms of what we're investing for the feedback that we're able to get. So I see it as a long-term thing, and as we refresh our digital stack around our international markets, we'll be bringing the Big Ears feedback solution to bear in each of those markets as we roll through. So at the start of a long-term relationship.
Great, thanks very much. I mean, I feel like, David, unless there's something that you think needs covering more depth, I feel like we've got really good answers to all of these questions, and just some great material as well that comes up around that. So you're happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that. Is Matt happy with that?
I'm always happy.
Thanks very much for your
time.
No,
my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Talking is one of my favourite things to do.
You're good at it as well. So
oh, thank you. I've built a...
Just when you guys first sort of engaged, when you first engaged Big Ears to do that original research project, can you just tell us a little bit about, what the reasons for that were at your end, what you wanted to know, what you thought you'd get at, what you thought you'd learn, and so on?
Yep, sure. And so we went into this project wanting to understand and provide a better experience to our customers, and what is quite often the case is we've had sort of more exposure with certain segments than others. There are always slightly different opinions about our customers and their needs and how they engage with our product. So one thing that we wanted to be careful with was to make sure that the assumptions that we were making were in fact valid, and to flesh out our knowledge in some of the areas of the industry where we've been less active in the past, so that we had a complete view. We haven't spent ridiculous amounts of money, but we're careful with every cent we spend. So we wanted to get into investing and developing our direct customer channel with confidence, and knowing that that the solutions that we were going to bring to bear were going to be fit for purpose for our customers.
Cool. were there particular areas that you were really, were there particular areas you consciously go, we want to know more, about this and this specifically, or was it like an
Absolutely.
overall sort of just a sharper picture overall? What was?
No, there were definitely some specifics. So, and they basically fall in two areas. One is, and it was kind of core to what we were wanting to confirm, is just what level of understanding there was within the motorsport community about what makes a motorsport seat safe. Obviously, we've got a pretty good understanding of those things because we make them, but there's a lot of kind of urban myth almost out there around lots of different safety products actually, and to hone in and make sure that we were educating our audience on the right topics, we wanted to be really clear, or get really clear on where their knowledge was at this point in time. So that was one key sort of bucket, was the whole understanding what the level of understanding was around seat safety within the motorsport community here in Australia. And then the other one was, and there's a little bit to this, while it's a seat that's easy to sit in, mounting it into a vehicle comes with challenges because you're into engineering sort of problems, especially when you're retrofitting a seat into an existing vehicle, because it's already going to have a roll cage and bar and mounting locations that are already there. Now, not all of our customers have the mechanical aptitude to make structural changes to their vehicles. But in some cases that's not really required, but they may perceive that it is, and that's a bit of a barrier to them purchasing direct from us. So there's this pathway to purchase that includes some sort of really important steps around being confident that you're able to select a seat, purchase it, and then actually mount it into your race vehicle. So the other sort of area that we were looking at was that we really focused in on was around what is the common installation strategy for getting a seat into a vehicle. Who goes to a engineer rather than trying to do it themselves, and why. Obviously looking to set up a purchase experience which gives the customer confidence that they're going to be able to take it the whole way through. So it was really about that. What do you know about motorsport safety with respect to seats, and how comfortable are you sort of taking a DIY approach for installation?
So you've got, obviously it's a really diverse,
Very.
really
Yep.
diverse customer mix, quite a lot of decisions that go into it. So in terms of what linked all that together, it was really just about getting a tighter, like a tighter view of each customer type at each
Yep.
stage, sort of thing. Just
Yeah, that's
really
right. Yeah, so so basically what we did was we took the customer needs states all the way from understanding and investigation, and we sort of overlaid that with the sort of market context around what types of racing people were involved with, so that we're able to, for instance, look at like some of the newer classes that are emerging classes in motorsport that aren't as heavily sort of policed from a safety point of view, like off-road. Obviously their level of knowledge around seat safety is quite different to a class like circuit racing that's always been there, has had safety standards in place for some time, and a high level of knowledge within that racing community. So we were able to kind of split out the different applications within motorsport. We were able to split out whether that person was whether the responder was an owner and racer of a vehicle, just owned it, as part of a team, to really hone in on those different segments and what that person's involvement within motorsport is, and what their knowledge and sort of purchase experience is.
Okay. So if we're boiling all of that down, do you reckon, at the end of the day, is it kind of, can you just give us the real helicopter view of what we needed to know,
Yep.
and why as a business you felt like why you needed to know it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
So the
Sort of across all those groups.
yeah, sure. And there is a theme that there's a definite theme that ran through all of the segments, and it was very consistent, more consistent than we expected it to be, and that's that the technical understanding of what makes a motorsport seat safe is low within the motorsport community. We're not the only people that have had that concern. Obviously, motorsport associations and clubs and series and all sorts of stakeholders are constantly trying to educate the racing community around how to stay safe when they're racing. But what we confirmed was what we had assumed, which is that that technical level of knowledge isn't common. And why that's important to us is the opportunity for us to leverage that is our product is best in class and it's super feature rich. So, trying to, and we're by no means are we the cheapest seat out there, right? So, we're wanting to promote our product based on its feature set. If the customer has no understanding of why those features are important or why they're structured in the way that they are, all they're going to see is a price tag. That's kind of that's the guts of the whole exercise, is setting up to have a really meaningful conversation with our customers around why our product is the right fit for them.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, in order to know what to tell them, you needed to know what they knew.
Yeah, basically. We needed to know what their kind of jumping off point was, so where they were at, where their knowledge is at now, because there are some things that they already know that we don't need to invest too much time in. But there were, we definitely identified some gaps, and that's going to be the backbone of an education program that we've started to sketch out.
Great, that's really good. I might ask you that the opening question again, and I think if we're going for the real sort of summary,
sure.
And from what I'm hearing, it's like we needed to know what they knew about safety, so that we knew what we could tell them about our product.
Yeah, correct.
That's effectively the journey, isn't it?
Yep, that's right.
There's so many of them with so many different layers at the end of the day. So, if you put yourself at the start of this project, looking forward to,
sure.
We're just getting started. Can you describe us? Can you sum up for us just what you wanted to find out about, and why you wanted to find that out?
Sure. Yeah, so we wanted to find out exactly where the motorsport community's knowledge was at with respect to what makes a motorsport seat safe, and that's super important to us because in investing time in educating our audience, we wanted to make sure we were talking about the right things, the features on a race seat are put together. It's a piece of engineering. It's quite technical, and it's about keeping the driver safe. And our seats are incredibly safe seats, really feature rich. But it's challenging to promote a premium product if the customer simply has no understanding of the value that it provides, or what makes it safe.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thanks very much. Tell you what, they are. I can hardly move in this thing, eh?
They're good, mate.
Great. Yeah.
They're real good.
My son, who's 12, is on about the Skyline. He wants to get one. He'll be wanting one of those. So that was what you sort of had the picture of what you wanted to know going in. In terms of what you then found, were there any sort of, were there surprises in there where you thought, well, we thought we were going to get this, but actually we got, but we got this, or what was the, what was some, if you can just tell us about whether there were any differences between
so there are
what you were expected to get at the outset, and then what you actually got
sure.
in reality.
Yeah. So there were a number of things that sort of surprised us that we weren't expecting to find. What we saw, we expected to see quite different levels of knowledge and different installation strategies within different classes of motorsport. There were some differences, but they weren't as significant as we thought they might be, and that was a real key learning for us when we started to get into conversations around our website information architecture and UX, we're not having to vary things too much, because there was some real consistency there. We found that a lot of our customers simply think that if it's an approved product, three products, three different manufacturers, if they're all approved, then they're all just as safe as each other, which just simply isn't the case. That was a real outtake. Another one was around emerging classes of motorsport and the difference in what they perceive to be important around seat safety. And then the last one, which really kind of jumped off the page at us, was the fact that the people who go to an engineer or a race car builder or race mechanic for the installation of safety products, and not just seats, other safety product as well, their level of understanding was much higher than people that are doing their own installation, which is interesting because people are passionate about motorsport. It's a heavily researched sort of category from a purchase point of view. But what we found is that your engineer is doing a pretty good job of educating their customers around how different safety systems work and what's important and what isn't.
Okay. Yeah. So overall, it's like the consistency was quite surprising, and I guess was the depth of sort of data and stuff, or the sort of the depth of understanding you got out of it. Was there anything that surprised you there?
Not necessarily, but no, nothing surprising, because obviously we interact with all sorts of different races all of the time. But what was really quite valuable with the research that was conducted was the role that audio plays, and the fact that we were able to, or that we gave the respondents the opportunity to speak, to provide us with their response. Now, that was quite heavily used, so we've ended up with a bank of just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clips of people that are active in the motorsport community talking about safety, and their understanding of safety and their reasons for doing different things. So, just hearing it in the customer's voice is quite powerful. It kind of, in a way, it provided sort of seasoning on top of the data set, on top of the quantitative sort of results. So, not surprising, but quite powerful.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So it was, I guess, was it a very, because presumably you would have done, you would have had a look at some of this sort of research data and stuff in the past, but yeah, can you talk to us a bit about what was the difference with actually hearing that voice, like, rather than seeing scores on a page or marks on a graph? Like, just tell us about your impression of what that.
So, it's interesting. So you run a massive research exercise. You get some statistician, and he starts weighting responses for you, and you're like, oh, okay. But via working with Big Ears, what we've got is we're able to weight based on people's level of emotion in a way, and everybody kind of everybody knows that that motorsport associations are a source of information for safety because they police the standard, but the tone of response and the audio responses kind of allows you to get under the hood a bit and actually go, well, what do customers feel about that? So it's an interesting beast because I don't know, when you bring the customer's voice right into the data set, and then you can kind of, you might have this hypothesis or this suspicion, and it'll be supported by the data or not, but regardless, you've got the customer actually telling you, which is something that's it's kind of like being able to run a focus group on steroids. So it was like a focus group of 1,000 people.
Yeah, right. That's really, yeah, absolutely. So the richness of the information
That's
as well,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Because I guess when it's voice, it's not just it's what they're saying, but it's how they're saying it. And are they
That's right.
really pissed off, or are they just a little bit disinterested or something?
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you just tell us again, just if you can, I'll ask that question again, and if you just give us again quite just your sort of summary.
Sure.
But what was really different about to you about hearing that firsthand rather than just sort of seeing it on a slide?
Yeah, so it brings a level of authenticity to the data set, and therefore to the results of the whole exercise. You've got the customer talking to you in their own words. You can pick up the emotion. You can make a very meaningful assessment on how they feel about a topic or how invested they are in their response. And so you can see the customer's sort of hot buttons on the way through.
And I guess at the same time you've still got the stretch, as you said, it's like a focus group of 1,000 rather than focus group of 10, because I guess because it's quite user friendly, convenient. It's the kind of thing you can still do at scale. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a few things. So I've been involved in all sorts of research over time, and the things from the pragmatic aspects of the exercise, right? So we got really high completion rate. We were asking people to talk about a topic that they're invested in, but we've got a fantastic completion rate, we had an amazing response rate for a start. We did post the survey above the line via social, but the majority of the respondents came in via email invites, and the click-through and response was just off the chart, and then the completion rate was great as well, right? So, sure, a topic that they're invested in, but the kind of mechanics of the research meant that our dropout was really low. We got complete responses with really sort of meaningful answers.
Yeah. So on the one hand, I guess the better or easier the experience is for the recipient. You got better experience gives you better completion, but then you're also getting richer data at the other end.
Yeah, that's right. And it was somewhere. It was a sort of an area. Well, the length of the survey itself, right, or how much ground we wanted to try and cover. Typical sort of stuff. We went in with a sort of view of, wouldn't it be great to get across all of these sort of topics, and all of the different sort of question branching we wanted to do, and the guys at Big Ears did a really good job of challenging us to stay focused on the most important topics, so that we weren't overburdening the respondent, and what we ended up with was quite a balanced approach where we definitely got the insight we needed, but we weren't asking too much of the respondent.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. We've dealt with a couple of different questions there. How did you find the actual process of working with the team at Big Ears? Was that?
Yeah, fantastic. Not my first time around with the team from Big Ears. So I knew the people and some of their tool set, so to speak. But I'm sure somebody coming in fresh would have had just as good of an experience. So it's great. They know their game, and they really focused on the overall outcome. Let them come in.
That's all right. We'll go.
Another run at it.
That's all right. Just pause. Yeah, I suppose if you were talking to someone who hadn't worked with these guys, what would you sort of summarise as the key things that sort of whether from now or before, but the key things that sort of stand out around what are the things you tell someone else about?
Yeah, sure. So great bunch of people, easy to deal with, which is always nice. But I mean the key thing is so really good upfront engagement to understand the outcome that we were looking for, and then plenty of courage in challenging us if they thought that we were doing something that wasn't going to achieve that outcome, which is great because you're always there's always that risk that you're going to kind of overdo things or make it too complex, try to achieve too much, or not really be thinking about the respondent and what's going to work best for them. So great to be challenged and guided to an outcome that because we're not research experts. That's why we engaged with Biggies. So they kind of held our hand and led us through it, and we ended up with a great result.
Great. So how would you? I mean, yeah, if you were summarising the value that was sort of the value delivered through this process.
Yep.
How would you describe that in your own words?
Yeah. So I mean, quite from a mechanics point of view, quite a powerful tool set that Biggies bring to bear in terms of their not only their research tools, but how they're able to present results through to you via customer radio. So that's cool. So good tool sets to start, but knowledge and experience, and like I was saying earlier, the ability to quite effectively guide you down a path that leads to quality research and achieving the outcome that you were targeting.
And then of course, and then the what would you say about the data itself that you get out? Either the experience of getting it in that form. We've touched on it before.
Yep.
There's the power of getting in the real customer voice, but in terms of how do you compare to other other surveys
Yep.
and things you've looked at, other experiences? How would you how do you describe to someone what the key differences are in terms of what you're getting out the other end?
So what I'd say, and so quite a different experience to other research projects I've been involved with, because typically what happens is, there's this translation step or insight step where somebody will tell you, based on the data, these are the things that are most important. And you never really get under the hood, unless you're sitting there with an analyst and running queries on the fly. You never really get under the hood and get the ability to kind of track themes or specific segments or anything that's really quite detailed. And what you typically get is some visualization and some commentary on the research. But if the person who's put that together doesn't have the right level of knowledge around the customer that we're looking at, things can get lost, or things can be seen to be material when they simply aren't. So what we were able to do with the tools that Biggie has brought to bear was we were able to really slice and dice the data set ourselves in quite a straightforward way, and we were also able to view the underlying responses and listen to the voice responses that we got. So we were able to arrive at our own insights without being reliant. It wasn't stats driven. We were able to quite sort of economically, in want of a better word, or it was quite a pragmatic sort of interface with the data, so that we were able to get through quite a lot of the responses, sort of line by line, and reach our own conclusions, with the benefit of the knowledge that we've got. Because I've seen it before where, you spend a whole lot of money, you end up with this paper, and you kind of look at it and you go, what country are they talking about?
What does this mean?
This is simply can't be right. And then there's this, gnashing of teeth and long faces, and people start trying to answer questions and blah blah blah. But so there was no risk anywhere on the way through that we weren't going to end up with a really meaningful result, and that was informed by the market knowledge that we've got as a business.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get that totally. Um, so in terms of then, having that sort of data, I guess that's augmented by and
Mm.
sort of based on actual that customer voice. Did that have any? Did that make for any differences in the sort of things you could do with it once you had it? In terms of how you use how you use that data, how you share it with the team, how using that customer voice as a something
Yeah.
to sort of
Yep.
guide thinking. Yeah, just
Mm.
tell us a bit about you just your take on compared to a typical sort of
Mm.
statistic based survey you
Yep.
might have got. Were there any did it open up any did the voice aspect open up any other ways of kind of using it and sharing it and doing things with it after you'd got those learnings?
Mm. Um, what having the voice did was kind of mean that there was no hiding from the result, right? Because something that we actually did was we put together an outline of some of the key findings and shared that with some of our industry partners. And if there was any sort of don't know about that sort of responses, it's like, oh, well, you just play them the clip of the customer talking, and it kind of added a layer of authenticity to the result that may not have been there if we didn't have the customer's voice sort of front and centre. I mean, the other thing that it did was really brought in the emotion from the customer. So you might ask two questions that at face value are very like for like, but if, you get a more emotive response for one, and then you kind of know, okay, well, the data might be saying that there's not too much difference between these two attributes, but when you listen to the customer voice, it's actually this one that's the most important, and it's obvious.
Knowing not just what they think, but how much they care.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Were there any sort of tools like customer radio, or was there any particular little tools or capabilities that you found really kind of particularly useful or relevant? Even sort of post the initial survey.
Yeah, so the guys at Big E's are very pragmatic, right? Which is cool. So we didn't, we had talked about visualization tools like Power BI or Tableau, or how do we surface this data in a smart way. We ended up, on recommendation from Team of Big E's, we ended up just using Google Sheets, and it was great. The Big E's tool set itself is pretty complete. I mean, when you look at the actual research tool through to Big E, through to customer radio, it's kind of all there. But then if you want to kind of slice and dice under the hood, as long as you're not silly in terms of your how you structure your data set, then there's plenty of tools out there, and it was kind of what makes most sense, what's going to achieve what we need to achieve without overdoing it, and that's why we landed on Google Sheets.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. I was just wondering if there's any other benefits, because I remember there was one thing I read with the Wellington City Council. I was reading an example of these guys where the head of customer or whatever just started just listening to little random playlists of customer radio on his way to
Sure.
work, just to kind of or in training or to explain something to new people. I was wondering if you've had any use of those kind of, particularly those voice assets, over and beyond the research of wanting to find out this about this. Not
specifically. I mean, there was plenty, and there still is plenty of interest in the research data, and where people are listening to the voice responses. So that's all kind of there for us now to access. But we're already pretty close to our customer, and what. There are a few things though that the fact that we're able to access it in voice, like I said, it allows you to kind of really feel the level of investment or emotion around the topic. But at the end of the day, there was just a whole lot of stuff in there that we kind of knew was the case, and this research exercise was fundamentally about confirming those assumptions.
Yeah. Do you find it quite easy to work? Is it quite easy to work with in terms of like you talk about being able to slice and dice or find out more about this or something? Like how do you find from someone who's managing and using that data? Just tell us about how you find that kind of process.
Oh, look, it was very straightforward. You know, it's a truism, right? The more complex your sort of research strategy, the harder it's going to be to access the insight. So the key thing that we reached a sort of a balance point where we weren't trying to be too fancy, and that wasn't just about making it achievable for the customer to go right through without dropping out. It was also about ensuring that we had data that we could actually engage with, and that was going to be meaningful for us without having to build models and bugger eyes around with a whole lot of stuff. So it was as accessible as it needed to be. Like I wasn't having to jump on the phone and hey, now I need this view. There was a little bit of an iterative process when we first started surfacing the data until it settled, but that was absolutely fine. Once we had that work done, it was just all there for us, and we were able to work through it till the cows come home. I mean, probably a good proof point on it was we've been working with a guy looking at so part of the wider project that we've been delivering has involved some brand development and some customer persona work and other things, and we were able to give access to the research results to some third parties so they hadn't been involved in the sort of design and build process with Big Ears. They were kind of just picking up the outcome to feed into their work. No issues. It was all there for them. They were able to access what they needed to access, find out what they needed to find out without having to put their hand up for a hand.
Okay, great. Yeah. So again, if you're describing it to someone who had never been through that process, I mean, just can you give us a top line view of what sort of stood out? Was it the fact that it was flexible? Was it the fact that it was deep? Like impact. You've already talked about the feedback, the data being quite rich, and powerful. So just what were the kind of the core attributes that you found stood out for you from the process?
Yeah, so I really appreciated the focus on the outcome that we were trying to achieve. So it wasn't about here's our service, boom, 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 put something in the hole type thing. It was very much so a lot of engagement up front around the wider project that we're investing in and the role that research played within that, what we were trying to achieve. So the guys at Big Ears invested a lot of time in really getting their heads into our customers' world and understanding what we were trying to achieve up front. That meant that they were able to give us really meaningful guidance on the way through, and that ultimately we achieved what we wanted to achieve.
Great, thank you. I mean, is there anything? I mean, one question is, looking back on that project, and I know I understand you guys have had a sort of a relationship since that initial project, sort of going forward. I mean, how would you describe that kind of that partnership with the business and the value it generates for racetech? Just overall.
Yeah, so probably I don't know. The words I'd use would be like honest and open, pragmatic.
You might want to just stop.
Yeah, sure.
This guy to go.
Yep.
Just sort of really summarising. If you were talking to someone at a Barbie who was just a totally different company, didn't know the industry, how would you just describe the things that I don't know your overall view about the value of that partnership and what it generates for racetech? How would you sum that up?
Yeah, so valuable. Loads of good stuff, right? But I mean, the cool thing about the people at Big Ears, right? The team there is that there's no bullshit or bluster. That there's not these shiny suits trying to sell you a service, and you do battle with them the whole way and hope you get some value out of it. It's a really sort of pragmatic, collaborative sort of engagement where real people dealing with real people trying to achieve something, and focused on the outcome that we needed to achieve. So very very pragmatic. There's no sort of smoke and mirrors or we're the experts in this, just leave us to it. Like very very close and finish just through that wall.
Yeah, great.
Yep, yep, absolutely, all handmade. Yep.
Like all the components and everything.
Oh, some bracketry we get in from a business around the corner, but yeah, handmade.
Cool.
Here and see you. No one. It blows people's minds when when they see it. It's
What's the price point on a seat? Anything particularly if you're talking to someone that hadn't worked with the guys, didn't know them.
Yep.
Is there anything else that sort of stood out around either the process, the outcomes, anything about it? What was sort of top of mind in terms of how
Yeah. So nothing.
in terms of how what we were talking about was just the cost benefit and
Yeah, sure.
against the alternatives.
Yep.
So if you just tell
Yeah,
us that
absolutely.
story again, that'd be
Yep.
great.
So one thing that was quite significant